Hello, friends, colleagues, students, C++ learners. This is Dr. Satish Singhal, and actually, I should make sure tell you that this is in C++. So, this is Dr. Satish Singhal, PhD, Professor of Computer Information Technology at Rose State College, Midwest City, near Oklahoma City in Oklahoma. I did a program on grading true-false quiz using parallel arrays. This is the modification of the same program using array of structures in C++. Array of structures are useful compared to using the parallel arrays. We'll talk about that soon. So in previous videos, we have described all parameters of software to grade true-false quiz using C++. And in 6 previous videos, please watch them for complete specification of this software. Link to one of them is given below here, and you can pause the video right now and write down this link on a piece of paper. But if you don't want to go through all that, you can also search YouTube with phrase grading true false quiz, and that will work. Okay. So this link will give you the first video, and then it'll help you to locate others. Otherwise, you can just go to our channel and search the channel. Okay. Okay. In previous video, we have used 3 parallel arrays. One to store quiz questions, second to store quiz answers, and then third to store student response. In this video, we will show that use of struct obviates the use of parallel arrays. No longer use the parallel arrays, and later can be risky. Use of parallel arrays can be risky if somehow parallelism is corrupted by some software action. For example, if you sort one array and not sort the other two exactly in the same configuration, then your parallel arrays become pretty much useless. And that's the risk you run using the parallel arrays. Using a structure obviates that risk. Okay. So here we show the declaration of the quiz struct, which has 3 data members, and the syntax is struct quiz, left curly brace, and then questions are stored as string, and answer and response are stored as boolean. True, because answer key will be true or false. It's a true false quiz, and response key will be true and false also. So once we create array of quiz, struct of quiz type, not array, struct, then each member of such, I'm sorry. If I create an array of this struct, then array of quiz type, then each member of such array would contain a quiz question, answer key to the question, and user response. Okay, so if we have 10 questions, then we'll create an array of quiz struct type of size 10, and then this question field will contain, of each member of the array will contain questions, 10 questions. Answer field of each array member will contain the answer to each question, and response will be storing the response. And this will become a little bit more clear when we show you all the functions that accomplish those things. So parallel arrays are no longer needed, basically. That's what it is. Okay. So 2 input files will be used as we have used them in past. And I'm going to show them to you. And that will help us to decide the strategy of reading those files. So let's go to the folder where files are stored. And okay, so documents. Okay, this is my questions file here. fonts may be a little small, but I think you can read them. So questions are kind of silly. Earth is flat is the first question. Moon is the satellite of Earth is the second question. Water freezes at 0 degree Fahrenheit is the third question. And notice questions are not extending more than one line. And that fact is important because when I read this questions file, I'm depending on that fact that questions don't extend more than one line. Okay. And then answers are, this is the answer file, 0 and 1, 0 for false and 1 for true. And notice again, answers are 1 per line, although in that case probably won't matter too much. Okay. So our strategy of reading questions file has to be that I'm able to read one questions. So this will be stored in the first member of the array, in the questions field of the first member of the array. This will be stored in the second member of the questions field of the quiz array, and so on. Okay, so we showed you that. So now we want to show rest of the code in the Xcode, and we'll only discuss key functions that were not discussed in the previous videos. Okay, so let's go to Xcode. In Xcode, we have the presentation view. If some of the strings, and I'll show that to you when I get there, are extended 2 lines, that's really not the source code, that's just the presentation view. Okay, so these are the functions in the order that we are called in the main and are needed. First, our include. I'm going to need the iStream, that's always needed. I'm going to need the fstream because I'm working with file. I'm going to need the string class because I'm going to be working with the string. And IOmanip, I will need to format some outputs, but I've seen that it works perfectly in Windows, but not so well, at least the way I'm showing here in this Xcode local output. If you do it on the terminal, probably it'll work out okay. Okay. And I create array of size 10. I could create bigger than that, but that's size 10 is fine for this case because my questions file had 10 questions. And then I create my quiz structure. Member question stores the questions. Member answer stores the answer keys. And member response stores this response user will be giving actually. Okay, so first function that is called from the main is this open input file, and it takes an ifstream object and a string to specify what type of file name request is being made to the user. And the function name does the file name validation and ascertains that file has some data in it. If those two conditions satisfy, then function returns by reference the ifstream object bonded to the input file. I'm only going to point one very important thing about this function. This has been discussed in a lot of depth in previous videos where we did and lots of other videos I've done actually. This function has been discussed many times, but I do want to point out one thing when working with the Mac. So let's go to that. Okay. So function will ask the input file name. Message will be questions input file or the answers input file because we are reading either the questions file or the answers file. And you will get the file name. And this code works for both in both Mac and Windows when absolute file path is given by the user. So really I should add, please input the absolute file path. Input the absolute file path of the data file to be read. Okay. So let me save it just in case. Okay. So when user gives absolute file path to the data file and getLine gets that path and then I use the open function, which uses file path dot c under str. This works both in Mac and Unix and Windows. And in a minute, I'll show you how to get the absolute file path on Mac. In Windows, I've done this before many times. You already know how that is done. But what is not going to work on Mac Xcode is, which is C++11 thing, that you can pass this string. It's not going to work. Okay. There are ways I can make it work, but it's not worth the trouble. So really, let's just stick to this thing, which we have used for eternity, and it still works. Okay. So how do I find the absolute file path on Mac? That's actually quite simple. Here's my terminal application, and let me just, okay, that's fine. So if I drag and drop the file, let's say I want to find absolute path to the answers file, to the terminal, it will, okay, I should have gone to the next line. Okay, let's do that cleanly. I want to find the absolute path to this text file. I drag and drop it, and really this is the absolute path / users. So root in Mac or Linux or Unix is not a drive letter, it's a /, and this is the absolute path to my file, and if I specify that, it'll work. Okay, so that's the important thing I wanted to mention, why I'm not using the C++11, which does not use CSTR open function. It doesn't work. Okay, at least it doesn't work in the sense that if I want to specify absolute path, then it doesn't work. Rest is same as I have described in previous videos, and the source code will be on my blog, so you can look at it again anew. All right, that's the open function file. Okay, so I'm done with that, so close that. Then second function is fill quiz questions. Takes an ifstream object bonded to the questions input file and populates the question field of members of array quiz, QZ. So let's take a look at this function. So go to definition. So understand that ifstream object passed to fill quiz questions function is already bonded to the question file that I showed you earlier. So let me show it to you again. Disappears real fast. So it's already bonded to this file successfully. Okay. So let's keep them together and see how the function works. So think of this way, that this file is already on the standby as a stream of characters. All right. So I'm gonna have to count how many members of this array I filled, although in this case I'll be filling it to the capacity, but there may be situations that array is bigger than number of questions here, or I will have, if array is not bigger than that, I may fill only some of them and not all of them. So the count will be actually length, logical length of the array that this function is supposed to return. Okay, and I define a character here, ch, and then my loop condition is a dual condition, that as long as I'm not reading the EOF character and as long as I'm not exceeding the array length or equal to the array length, keep this loop going. And this loop is excellent, the EOF control loop, and of course in this case the control by the maximum number of elements in the array. It's very good, it works beautifully. So then I set a string temp to zero length string, and getLine reads my whole line. And if I go back to the file, so in the first iteration of the array, it's going to read this line, store into the temp, and then I take the 0th member of the queasy structure array, and in the question field of that I store this question. So if the first member of my QZ array, which is the quiz array, stores this question, and then I increase count by 1. Well, 1 less than max, which is 10, is still true, and I still have not reached the end of the file. So in that case, second question read is moon is satellite of Earth, and that is stored inside, count is 1 now, inside the second array element in the questions field of that array element. So crux of the whole thing is that this loop may end either by this mechanism or by this condition being false, but nevertheless we would have copied 10 questions into the questions fields of array of structure QZ, and then the logical length of the array is returned. Okay, so that's how this function works. So I think it may be a good idea for us to see how main uses these, so that you have some idea of the progress that we have made in terms of these functions. So in the main, I set these flags fixed, show point, set precision to 2, and I think this was done that I wanted to print the percentage the user has to 2 decimal points, and bool alpha is set that if 0 is stored in a Boolean array, then that will show up as false, and if 1 is stored, that will show up as true. And then once again, I want to make sure that you understand that this is shown in presentation view spilling into 2 lines, but really this is not 2 lines. You can't write code this way. It'll be on 1 line. When I get out of the presentation view, it'll be in 1 line. Okay. So I create a stream object first. I call my open input file function, pass the stream object in, and this means that I'm going to be reading the questions file. So I'll show you the output that I have from the past. So when this is called, it asks the input of the questions data file to be read, and here I've given the absolute path. So it opens the file, feeds it back, and it says file is open and it has data in it. Okay, so then I create a quiz type array called QZ of size max is 10, and I pass that to the fill questions function, blank array, and the stream object that is bonded to this file here, questions file. And we saw the mechanism that this function will fill question member, this member of each array member, field of each array member, and it will return the logical length of that array. And then we close it because I want to use the same stream object to fill the answers file. I don't want to create another one. I can use the same one. Once I close, the bonding with the questions file is broken, and if stream object is available again. Okay, and then I call the open input file, this time with the requesting the answers file, and then pass the array. Now this time array already has the questions field filled for all members, but this time I'm going to fill the answers field. And so let's look at this function now. So this function is supposed to, here's the description of this function, fill quiz answers. So this function, fill quiz answers, takes if stream object bonded to answer input file and populates the answer field of members of array QZ. Okay. So let's go to this function. So Now the array already has the questions field filled for all the array members. If stream object is bonded to the answers file, so let's show you the answers file now, again a new, and let's get rid of this one. An answers file has 0 for false, 1 for true. So remember the first question was earth is flat, so 0 means it's a false, answer key is false. Second was moon is satellite of earth, well that's true, so answer is 1. Okay, all right. So here the loop remains exactly the same, but since I'm not reading the whole line, I just need to read one character. So I just say in arrow arrow quiz count answer. So in the answer field, I just store either 0 or 1, and you don't need to worry about the fact that this is integer and answer field is Boolean type. In C++, if you store 0, it will be considered Boolean false automatically. So Boolean array will store zeros and ones in C++. Not true in other languages, but certainly in C++ that's not a problem actually. So 0 will be stored as a false and 1 will be stored as true. Okay? And the loop is identical to the other loop, which was the fill questions, and it returns the logical length. Okay. So, and then we close the if stream object again. Yeah. So this was fill quiz questions, fill quiz answers. This function we just called. Okay. In an unlikely situation, it can happen that length of two arrays returned is not the same. It's unlikely, but it can happen. In that case, if they don't match, we tell them the number of question and answer keys don't match, and I'm going to exit the array. Okay. In a way, it's not the length of the array. Length of the array is whatever it is. It's really the number of questions and answers. Okay. And then we say return 5. That's my error code. Returning 5 is error code. Okay. But if that doesn't happen, then everything's okay. And then I present to the user questions and record their response. So I tell user, please answer the questions for quiz. Enter 1 for true answer and 0 for false. And then this function is called, which has already this array, quiz array, which has the questions and answer keys. But still the blank, this field response is still blank, and we are attempting to fill this for all the questions that user is going to answer. Okay. So let's look at this function. So this function simply, okay, so by now this array has all the questions and answer keys. So our job in this function is only to present the question part of each array member and record the response. Okay. So we just run a for loop for the logical length of the array, which in this case will be actually filled capacity. And first we present the question. And then we declare a variable called temp. User will answer either 1 or 0, and we record that. If temp is not 0, because 0 is false, then I set the quizii.response field of each array member to true. Otherwise, I set it to false. Okay. So this way, when program is running, each time a question will be presented, and user will answer 0 or 1. And that will be recorded right here by this code line or this code line, depending upon whether they answered 0 or 1. And this has been done earlier, so I just wanted to show you how this is done. So a question will be presented. In when I was doing this test, I just answered 1 for everything, just for the sake of convenience. So in that case, 1 will be answered, stored into the response field of this array, which you see here, quizii response. Then second time I answered 1 again, then 1 will be stored in the second element of the quizii array, and so on. So basically this function here will fill the response part of all the quizii array members. Okay, the response field of all the quizii array members. All right, so that's called from the main, and that gets the response field of all the quizii array members filled. Then we want to score the test, because by then user is finished answering all the questions in the true false test. So we just score the test, and for the test we take the quizii array. Now it has all the responses and the answer keys. So we score the test and get how many points user got. So let's see this function now. So here it's actually very simple, because quizii array now have all the user responses and answer keys. So we run a for loop, and if answer field of a particular array member matches the response field, that means they have answered the questions correctly, that question correctly. So we increase their score by 1 point. Otherwise, this condition will be false, and the score variable is not incremented, and we return the score to the caller function. So let's go with function call now in the main. So score test function scores the test, returns the point, and then we print the points and how many questions were asked. And then we create a percent variable to compute their percentages. Strictly speaking, it should be a static cast. Okay, well, people are going to castigate me for that, so I will do it static cast. And there you go. Okay, so now it works. Beauty of static cast is not going to force if this is the wrong type, if it's not castable. The old cast will force the cast. And if this percent is above 60%, user pass the test, otherwise they fail the test. And last one prints all the questions, answer key, and the user response. And I have shown the style of that in the previous video. I'll show that here again, although output will not work the way I was hoping it to work. But basically we set a questions column, a answer key column, and the user response column. And my hope is that the column will line up, because I've used this set w, set fill, etc. To do that. And then I run a for loop and print the question, answer key, and the response. And if there was a match, just like the score was gotten earlier, we say you answered this question correctly, otherwise you answered this question wrongly. Okay, so that's that. And I have confirmed that on Windows the columns do line up. You're not going to see them lined up here. That has to do with the way Xcode console is set up. But I'm pretty sure if we run it from the command line using GCC or even command line Xcode, it'll work fine. And maybe I should have done that, but running a little short on time, so didn't do that actually. Okay, so now I'm just gonna run this program and show you how the whole program works. And basically I think this is it. That was my last. Okay, so in Xcode, let's just go full screen. Yeah, and I'm going to run the program, and I have the file name somewhere here, hard coded, actually right there. And I think if that doesn't work, I'll have to do something else. It actually did work. So it says file name entered is this. Does, oh, okay, it says doesn't exist. So I think, okay. So somehow I had a problem with my code. Oh, okay, let me get out of this. Okay, I think because I'm in the presentation mode, that's why. So let me go back to the default mode. And it should, let's stop it and run it again. Okay, and let's see. It ran before, so I'm kind of surprised that it doesn't run now. But let me get the file path again, actually. Question file to be read. Okay, so let's get the absolute path again. Fresh. Actually, I have it here. Okay, but should have worked. And if it doesn't work right now, you'll just have to take my word for it that it does work. I've used it before. Yeah, see, it worked now, actually. So file name entered is this. So there's something wrong with that path that I had there, but it does work now, see. And is opened and has data in it. Okay. And then answers file in the same folder. I'm just going to modify the path for that. So really the answer file is simply same path, but answers.txt. And it accepted that also. Open and has data in it. And now it's presenting me the quiz. Answer the questions for quiz. Enter 1 for true answer, 0 for false. So for the sake of convenience, I'm going to enter 0 for everything. Okay. So 0, 0. So I'm going to answer false for every question. And before we look at the feedback, it says you scored 7 points out of 10. You passed the test. And percentage was not printed. I don't think I printed the percentage anyway. I just used the percentage to give this message here. And then here are correct answer and response. Earth is flat. And in a correctly format, if format would have worked here, which it didn't work in this Mac output console, then correct answer will be under this column, which will be false, and response will, second false will be under this column. But somehow the format doesn't work here. It works beautifully in Windows, and if you run this from the command line, even on Mac, it works beautifully. Okay, so that's the question, is just the feedback. Okay, so this is the same true false quiz program done using structure, where we define the structure here, and we create an array of structure, and we fill the question field for each array member, the answer key field, and then we record user response in corresponding question and answer key member fields of the struct members. So basically it avoided using parallel arrays, and now even if I wanted to sort this array based on the questions or something, I could easily do that. For example, I can say, for example, I can sort it on the like all the true questions are lumped together, false together. I could do that if you wanted to, but of course I don't have to do that. But it can be done, and nothing will be messed, basically. All right. Okay, so thank you for watching, and this was the Struct version of the true false quiz software using C++. Thanks again.